World War II's secret boot hack that stopped Frostbite cold lost survival trick that still works if you were marching across the Russian front in 1942. Your greatest enemy wasn't always the soldier across the line. It was the cold. Temperatures dropped so low that rifles froze to hands. Food turned solid in minutes, and feet simply died. Frostbite didn't just hurt, it crippled. It ended missions. It killed men slowly. Yet, against all odds, there was one quiet innovation that changed everything. Not a weapon, not a machine, just an improvised, almost primitive method to keep blood flowing when the world outside turned white. The boot liner trick. It was simple, unglamorous, and field-tested under the worst winter conditions humans have ever fought in. And the soldiers who learned it survived when others didn't. Today, we're breaking down exactly how this forgotten hack worked, and why it still matters for modern-day survivalists, explorers, hikers, hunters, and anyone who might ever be forced to endure extreme cold. Because, here's the truth, the science of frostbite hasn't changed, only the materials have. During the winter of 1940–142, the Eastern Front became an icy graveyard. Frostbite claimed enormous numbers of soldiers, sometimes more than direct combat. Men would wake to find toes numb and pale, then blue, then black. Entire divisions slowed or stopped because soldiers couldn't stand, couldn't march, couldn't fight. The human body's response to extreme cold is to protect the core. It constricts blood flow to the extremities. That means fingers and toes become the first casualties. Once deep tissue freezes, recovery is uncertain. In many cases back then, amputation was the only outcome. Many people assume the problem was poor boots. But that's only half the story. German and Soviet armies had decent designs for their time-thick leather, sturdy soles, sometimes felt inserts. Other forces used layered systems to the real enemy. Hiding inside the boot wasn't the design. It was moisture. Your feet sweat when you move. And when you're marching in freezing temperatures, that sweat becomes dangerous. Moisture trapped inside a boot turns into an ice chamber the moment you stop moving. Wet wool loses its insulation fast. So what begins as a normal march can turn into a silent countdown to frostbite. So soldiers started adapting. Not with advanced fabrics or modern membranes. They had no Gore-Tex, no Thinsulate, no high-tech liners. What they did have was desperation and creativity. Troops began experimenting with layering using whatever they could find: newspaper, paper scraps, straw, cloth, remnants. The key breakthrough came when soldiers started lining their boots with these materials between the sock and the boot. At first glance it sounds almost ridiculous. Paper, straw, in a combat boot. But the logic was real and surprisingly sophisticated. This wasn't about adding bulk. It was about controlling moisture and preserving insulation. The improvised liners absorbed sweat away from the skin. That meant the dampness didn't immediately saturate the main insulating sock layer. And if the moisture did freeze, it froze in a sacrificial layer that could be removed and replaced. Straw had an extra advantage. It created tiny air pockets. Those pockets trap body heat. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't elegant, but it worked. Soviet soldiers often used newspaper because it was available and easy to replace daily. Germans used straw stuffed into felt boots when they could. Other Allied forces used removable felt liners that could be dried overnight. It wasn't the specific material that mattered most. It was the system. A thin layer near the skin. A disposable or absorbent barrier. Then a thicker insulating layer. Then the boot. This principle later evolved into what we now call moisture management and vapor barrier-inspired cold weather systems. It's the same reason modern extreme cold boots often feature removable liners. The idea is to prevent sweat from freezing you from the inside out. Now, let's bring this into the modern world. If you're heading into sub-zero conditions, whether for hiking, hunting, winter camping, or emergency preparedness, you can apply the same logic without needing expensive gear. Start with a thin inner sock. Synthetic or silk is ideal. The purpose of this layer is to reduce friction and move moisture away from your skin. Next, add a disposable liner layer. This is your wartime step. You can use newspaper, paper towel, or another dry absorbent material. In a true survival situation, even dry grass can help if it's contained and doesn't T-bunch or irritate your skin. The point isn't comfort. The point is moisture control. Then add a thicker insulating sock over that wool or a thermal blend. After that, put on boots that aren't too tight. This is critical. Tight boots restrict blood flow. Even the best moisture system can't save you if circulation is compromised. And here's the discipline piece that World War II winters taught the hard way. You must manage this throughout the day. Carry extra inner socks or extra liner material. If you'll be out for long periods in deep cold, change halfway through the day before moisture builds to dangerous levels. At night, if your boots have removable liners, take them out and dry them. If they don't, focus on drying your socks and replacing your liner layer. The troops who survived didn't just have a trick, they had a routine. This isn't overkill. This is how you protect the body part that determines whether you can keep moving. Because in cold survival, feet are everything. If your hand's numb, you can still walk. If your face is cold, you can still march. But if you lose your feet, your entire survival clock speeds up. There's also a psychological reality here that doesn't get talked about enough. Warm feet aren't just physical comfort, they're mental stability. When your feet hurt, every mile feels longer. Every decision slows down. Every task becomes heavier. Keeping your feet warm and functional protects your willpower as much as your body. This is why the boot liner trick matters beyond history. It represents a turning point in how humans learned to survive extreme cold under pressure. It proved that warmth isn't just about thick insulation. It's about moisture control and airflow. That lesson shaped post-war cold weather gear and remains central to modern expedition strategy. So here's the simple truth that ties everything together. You can have the best insulated boots in the world, but if your socks are wet, you're done. The difference between frostbite and endurance is the same today as it was in 1942. Dry feet, the World War II boot liner trick wasn't glamorous. It didn't win medals, but it saved lives. It turned newspapers into shields and straw into survival gear. And for anyone who takes cold weather seriously, that's not just a story. That's a tool. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Nature doesn't care how advanced you are. But it will reward preparation and punish complacency. The men who survived those winters did so because they adapted faster than the cold could kill them. And that lesson still works.